At the start of 2023, RuneScape was in a fragile state. Player numbers weren't looking great, blamed on a lack of new content to keep players around. Not to mention the identity crisis with graphics, desired updates being shelved, and the massive elephant in the room: the sheer amount of MTX constantly popping up in your face. Jagex had spent the year rebuilding trust in the community, creating the most exciting year of content in years. There had been some pretty decent quests, bosses and skilling through Fort 4 and 3, and a much-desired max cash update that finally snagged discontinued rares away from the toxic, manipulative fan sites and put them back on the Grand Exchange. When Jagex released Necromancy on the 7th of August, it was another confirmation that things were moving in a great direction. A new and anticipated combat skill, joined with a brand new city, lots of quests and challenges. It wasn't perfect, but the effort and passion that had gone into it was easy to see. Trust was rebuilding, but the year wasn't over yet. Jagex eagerly laid out the roadmap for the coming months. And finally, the future was looking bright. A new quests, events, bosses and quality of life, but also an unannounced major update. Very exciting. What could possibly go wrong?
Today, what we're going to introduce you to, something I'm very excited about, is a brand new core part of RuneScape's experience launching next week. It's time to introduce you to Hero Pass.
You've done an oopsie again with the new Hero Pass.
They shoot themselves in the foot again and again and again.
Should not be considered a major update,
as this is definitely a major misstep by Jagex.
It was a mismarketing mistake.
This is trash. This is a garbage update that nobody asked for.
This gives things that are way worse for the game than just XP.
The release of Hero Pass was met with a hurricane that quickly blew past the borders of the RuneScape community. The fiery fury on Reddit and YouTube was one thing, but when the popular streamer Asmongold covered the drama in front of several 100,000 viewers, mainstream gaming news started to pick up on the storm that was brewing inside the Jagex's teacup. From an outside perspective, the outrage was a little surprising. This was the same community who, for the most part, remained seated when Jagex added buyable gold and XP 10 years prior. And despite their vocal distaste of predatory loot boxes, and the feeling of being a mouse in a lab for any of their MTX experiments, they had never, ever caused an uproar of this magnitude to any of the countless promotions over the past decade. But on the inside, this wasn't just about a battle pass. This was the result of a slow burnout that had been approaching since the very introduction of MTX. A patience that now, as the result of a bond that had drifted further apart than ever before, had snapped like a twig.
Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
The players of RuneScape are no stranger to disappointment. More than once has content been released that completely misaligned with player perception, and a few times less as Jagex said they didn't realize how players felt and will do better. But the way Hero Pass was designed is living proof that past mistakes and lessons learned aren't noted down in any other form other than lived experience. There is no internal holy book of do's and don'ts. Once an employee leaves and another one enters, it's right back to square one. This version of a RuneScape Battle Pass was the third iteration. The first attempt came all the way back in 2018 under the name Rune Pass. It ran for just 2 weeks, as a test to see how it would perform in a week without Treasure Hunter, to see if the Battle Pass formula was an alternative and healthier way of diversifying their income stream. It was a move any ordinary Jagex employee wanted, but one their stakeholders didn't allow. At this point in time, Jagex was the sole provider of a $1.2 billion debt the stakeholders were trying to pay back in China, so removing any form of income was out of the question. The Rune Pass was shut down due to the controversies around its pay-to-play design. Jagex openly admitted that Rune Pass had been a financial success, and so they gave the concept another shot with the Yak Track in 2019. At launch, it was actually quite successful. It offered a variety of high-quality cosmetics for both free-to-play and paying members. But from one season to the next, the quality deteriorated and the rewards were slowly moved away from the free track and over to the paid version. A new yak track often left a bitter taste, with players wondering how it could get any worse with the next season.
Look, we made mistakes, we were clumsy. Again, it's like wood for the trees. The individual components, we need to make money, we need to run a business, we need to pay for all the content we make. There's obviously some business realities in there, but alienating our players is bad for business. That's not what we want to do.
Jagex wasn't blind to the feedback, and thanks to the initial launch of Yak Track, knew a successful Battle Pass iteration was possible. Where the track had been originally intended to be an interactive cosmetic shop, it had actually been successful in providing worthy rewards for casual gameplay. By redesigning the narrative of a Battle Pass so that its intention is to guide your playstyle instead of offering rewards for burning 2,000 logs, Jagex could create something better based on the principles the players responded positively to. Hero Pass was designed to achieve two things: increase player playtime and encourage players to pay for membership. The intention of the pass relied on an ancient philosophy that the release of Slayer first unveiled, and Dungeoneering carried on, that players want to be told what to do. When you log into a game like RuneScape and find yourself overwhelmed by the amount of possibilities, you could simply open up the pass and follow the path it laid out for you. The theme each season would revolve around recent updates, giving players a gentle push to try out new content and, ideally, fall enough in love with the world to upgrade to paid membership, and thus also unlock the additional rewards on the paid track, which was available to all Premier members. For players who already knew what their goals were, they'd passively progress in the background, being rewarded cosmetics and benefits simply for playing the game. Given MTX was here to stay, this was, in theory, a perfectly reasonable design. In fact, it was the pitch given to the few players who were told about the system prior to its release. But the detachment between Jagex and the players started at a core understanding of what RuneScape was, and how players interacted with the game. And when you start dissecting the pass with the idea in mind that Jagex looked at the players as individuals rather than a community, players who prefer wanting to be told what to do and, ideally, want to play alone, compared to the community perception of players who compare themselves to each other, enjoy specific parts of the game, and have worked relentlessly for 100% completion, the developers had already fallen off the line they were trying to walk. Hero Pass had 120 levels, a gentle nod to the skill cap in the game. Each of the first 99 required 1,000 points, the final 21 required 3,000. Though there were a few boosts at significant milestones, or with seasonal themed missions like opening the interface, you were still looking at the daunting task of collecting 162,000 points at a rate between 200 and 440 points per active gameplay hour. At that speed, completing all levels required a playtime of about 4 hours every single day. The duration of the pass was designed around what the internal player metrics said. For the 3-month duration of the pass, Jagex estimated about 30% of the active player base would be able to complete all of it, meaning most of the players could unlock the majority of the rewards. As mentioned, the player base was already set on completing everything. Any temporary content that couldn't be completed in time was considered predatory design, forcing players to log on every single day and play for an unhealthy amount of hours, unless they opted to buy points for real-life money, an alternative that weren't even mentioned in the release article. The cosmetic rewards were good too. 94 had been made for this season, and even after hearing the intended design, I don't really understand how Jagex figured the players would be fine with not getting them all. Maybe cosmetics didn't sell that well, so they thought it wouldn't be a driver for the pass? I honestly don't know about that one. I mean, yeah, money, but selling cosmetics was not really a part of the core design, so something must have happened along the way there? I don't know, anyway. The most criticized reward were the content buffs. first of its kind in the game, where unlocking certain milestones on the track awarded benefits directly in content, like having one less step per clue scroll or reduced damage in the Samarakian Elite Dungeon. Good on an individual level, if RuneScape was a single-player game, but beyond damaging in a competitive multiplayer game where the economy and high scores mattered. Jagex argued the damage buff wouldn't count for the high scores, but the players pointed out the precedent it would set if people for some reason were optimistic about paying for direct content advantages. Another part of this was incorporating the daily challenge system into the pass. The intention was to reduce UI clutter, but in the process remove the option for Ironman to gain a daily XP boost, and significantly increase the time it took to complete a daily challenge, from a few minutes to now taking 40 minutes, in exchange for a smaller XP reward. And here's the kicker, launching all of this as a major content update. The community didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They felt so gaslit they didn't believe Jagex actually thought this package of marketing and MTX was a good idea.
We justified that we thought they could work, but what we didn't see was the players' sort of overall impression. When you add it all together, it gives a really different impression from what all the individual components seemed like from a design perspective internally. We just didn't understand. We didn't see the same thing as players saw. We do need to improve on that. And the Hero Pass thing is, for me, we never want to alienate that we want players happy with the games that we provide them.
RuneScape's community management team was going through a nightmare. They were at the front lines of fire, facing the consequences of their actions through players rioting over their choice of words. Jagex's newest addition to the community team, Mod Doom, revealed a little insight into how that major content phrasing came to be. It had stemmed from a long discussion with fellow community manager Mod Hooley, where, though they had recognized the potential problems by calling it content, it was being shipped inside the same crate as the other game content updates, making it easier to categorize it under the same umbrella.
Oh, you must have known it was going to get a rage. You must have known. But what people don't realize is what's going on inside the company, where almost all of that team's attention has been on necromancy, getting player feedback, trying to do a big marketing campaign, make it the biggest, best thing it can. And this Hero Pass thing was sort of happening in parallel, not getting as much attention. Everyone's focus, community marketing as well as the devs, was on that. And it sort of then kind of popped out a month later because all of the community engagement and player testing pre-launch all went on necromancy. All of that mind share was on the necromancy feedback and community engagement, and there was sort of none spare, if you like, at least in our own heads, for Hero Pass. But I think for anything of that magnitude, we need to get some player feedback, even if it's private, under NDA. We need to just test the waters for anything of significant size. It wasn't that we thought it would be amazingly successful. It was more that our attention had been diverted and there was no malice.
While social media was burning, Jagex never tried to excuse the Hero Pass on lack of attention. Instead, they took responsibility, although with a bit of optimism. 2 days after launch, they published an article apologizing for the misleading words and tried explaining their intention behind the design. They believed they had something good in between the misunderstandings and wanted to work with the players to reshape the pass moving forward. But a redesign wouldn't fix the distance between studio and player, and this fire was already out of control.
ModPie, or ex-ModPie, said it's very disappointing to see this go through.
This battle pass is obviously really fucking stupid. It's obviously designed in a way to make people want to spend money. It's not player friendly at all. It's just made to make money. And I think that most battle passes are like that.
We've really screwed this up. And, hopefully with Hero Pass, we ripped all the NTX stuff out of it in about a week. It was a mistake, and hopefully players will see that we're trying to make good on that.
When the fire spread outside the RuneScape bubble, Jagex went from fixing the pass to getting control of their image. A new article was written just 2 days after the other, this time with a formal apology, with an instant removal of any damaging feature. the buyable points, the complete deletion of any content buff and experience boost, leaving the pass to be entirely focused on cosmetics alone. In addition, the daily challenges would be added back to the game. Next, Jagex would take some time to come up with a game plan moving forward, one that included the players, to hopefully rebuild the shattered relationship. Then, it was quiet. As the weekend hit and Jagex's employees went home, the social media sites went back to their ordinary self. Some people reported feeling a bit burnt out, choosing to take a break from the game. Some content creators decided to switch over to old school or left the game entirely, while some creators reported a notable loss of viewership. Others were questioning how badly this had affected membership numbers for Jagex to completely pivot and apologize. Looking at the player numbers today, there's actually no notable loss of players in this period. The game had already, on average, been losing players for about 2 years, and we were still coming down from the recent spike that necromancy had caused. Entering December, the game saw its annual spike, which though still means more people played RuneScape in the months following Hero Pass. The spike was on average shorter than their counterparts before and after. Jagex returned on September 15th with their new game plan, wanting to do a community consultation, a 3-step plan to improve the Hero Pass with feedback directly from the players. The developers must have noticed this was yet another example of misaligned interests, as while Jagex had the intention of improving the system, the players had made their minds up in the other direction. And thus, just 2 weeks later, Jagex announced the shutdown of Hero Pass at the end of its season. In the months and even years after the Hero Pass incident, some of the minority opinions started to appear on rare occasions. Controversial opinions giving Hero Pass praise, or requests to bring back the Yak Track wasn't entirely uncommon, although the players who stood their ground through the fire were quick to shut them down. These are, however, the visual representation of a surprisingly huge demographic that found the pay-to-win model a worthy addition to the game. After all, despite the immense praise Jagex received for removing Treasure Hunter in January of 2026, they did share their metrics, saying that 35% of the players were actually against its removal. If the game had the same polling system as old school, requiring a 70% majority to pass, Treasure Hunter would have survived. Jagex clearly had learned their lesson, not only deciding not to touch that 35% with a 35-feet pole, outright ripping Treasure Hunter out now that they had even aired the potential of that happening. And though Jagex still has some MTX remaining in the game, they never mentioned the word Battle Pass ever again.